Hello, welcome to the NEDP podcast. My name is Nadia Cater. I'm your host. Today we're in really gorgeous Taos, an incredible view from, what campus is this? Klauer Campus. We could see huge mountains. We see a bunch of Adobe style houses. It's all green. It's a gorgeous day.
Beautiful.
Absolutely, yeah. And today we are with the adult ed team out of TECC. What does TECC stand for again?
Taos Education and Career Center.
Taos Education and Career Center, yes. And thank you for joining me, Kylee, Shipp, and Erin Clark. Thank you guys. Welcome.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about NEDP, which is National External Diploma Program. I got that right? Okay, everyone's nodding. You're not going to see this because it's a podcast.
Yep.
But yes, I got that right. So yeah, let's start. What is NEDP?
So NEDP is an alternative for students who do not want to take the GED or the HiSET to earn a high school equivalency. It's competency-based. So students, there's a process for getting into the program or getting started, I should say, called the diagnostic phase, where they do have to test at a certain level to start the generalized assessment part of the program. But along the way, they're earning points, I guess, or competency. It's not even points. They're just earning their high school equivalency. And by the end, they have earned it without having to take a GED or a HiSET test.
Oh, interesting. Could you guys just go out a little bit into detail? Like, what does that look like? Like, how do you know when a student has reached a competency or earned a competency? What do we call it?
Yeah, so their requirement of the program is they get 100% competency. So there's much more kind of back and forth with the programming. So they have an assessor who meets with them to do assessments along the way, but they're also doing tasks or activities to get ready for the assessment called the in-office check. And all of those have to be done to 100% competency, which means they can't make any mistakes, but they can try as many times as they need to.
Interesting. So, and that covers the same subjects as the high school equivalency, right?
It's broader, I would say.
It's really geared toward the adult learner. The students who we see are excelling, sticking with it right now, or who we promote the program to, are generally adults who have families and are living their adult lives already. So they're holding down jobs, they're managing a household budget, they're, taking care of their children and all that entails. And so while there's science and geography and history, there's also financial literacy, and they just reaches the adult learner because they're coming to these competencies with background experience already, and it's meant to be helpful to the lives they're currently trying to live as adults. So,
wow, that is interesting. You said geography?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there are those elements where there's science, math.
Oh, okay. I was like, I'm doing proper geography on the HSC.
Geography is on the HSC.
Well, yeah, and
I remember.
It's really about, that one is really about economics, it seems. I'm looking at other countries and the economies and comparing and contrasting those. So,
wow, okay. Yeah. So, what brought your program to take this alternative on? Because it's really different from a traditional HSC like GED HiSET, right?
Yeah, the state of New Mexico, I can't speak expertly to when they adopted it 2 years ago.
Yeah, it passed through all the required approval through the legislature
a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was put out there from NMHED, Adult Ed. There was money behind it to have programs pilot it. Mm-hmm. So because the CASAS testing component of it that they do at the beginning does cost a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think the accounts cost. There's some cost to having the account for each student. Mm-hmm. And so that while there was no supplemental salary being offered for a program or anything, all of those initial costs of getting the program moving were covered. And so we just I was like, Erin, we have to do this, and you should be the one to take it on. So now she owns all of the responsibility, has all of that in our program.
You were voluntold.
Yeah. At the time, it just felt like it would be a great alternative for some of our students that we don't post-COVID. We really came back in person, and we have some online options. We really aren't able, due to our size, to offer the kind of flexibility that some students need. And so I think we're going to talk about this in a bit, but it really works for students who have full-time jobs and can't attend our regular classes, which are in the morning from 9 to 12.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is interesting. So how many students are you guys currently serving?
So we currently have 13 at some phase of starting NEDP. We have 2 that are actively in the generalized assessment phase. So that means they've gotten through the diagnostic part of it, where they have to complete a few things to get ready to move into the competencies. And then we've got the other 11 are somewhere in that process. And then we've got 2 or 3 more who have indicated they're ready to start. So I would say we're at about 15.
Okay. Yeah. So just for clarification, like, what are the phases of NEDP?
So there's 2. There's the the diagnostic phase.
Right.
And then there's the generalized assessment. And then within the diagnostic phase, there's a reading, a math, and an essay test. And then if students don't quite get to the cut score they need to start the generalized assessment part of the program, we come up with a learning study plan, and then they can retest as soon as they feel ready. There's also something they're called open assessments, but those are like a career exploration. Help me, what
Technology self-assessment.
Yeah, it's
digital literacy self-assessment.
And then a competency self-assessment, so they can kind of see what they're going to be doing in the generalized assessment phase. Like, what's your comfort level with financial literacy? Or what's your comfort level with percentages, things like that. So it's all self-assessed, and they do that while they're doing the testing. Once they get through that, there's also a college and career portfolio piece, but we work through that with them. And then once they get all those completed, they move into the generalized assessment, which is the competencies. And there are 10 competencies.
8 now.
That's right. They went to 8.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
They combine geography and history.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And another one.
Wow. Okay. So, just jumping off of what you said, Erin, you mentioned that if they don't quite get to a point of general assessment, then you guys create a study plan or a learning plan. What does that look like, or what?
So the students that have, some of it looks like we put them on essential ed. And they do some work on that. Like, one of our clients, she's a couple points away on her math. So she's been spending time on essential ed, focusing on the math portion. So when she retakes it, she's more confident. For some students, it's been actually meeting with the tutor, because they can meet with a tutor to work on things. You can run a report. It's the CASAS goals test, and the math is life skills. So we can run a report and see what they're missing.
Okay.
And then it can be as specific as, like, the question you missed on the math had to do with fractions or had to do with decimals. And so they can work with a tutor directly if they want to. A lot of the students, I would say, have just done some work on essential ed and then retaken it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So are the volunteer tutors?
No, we don't have any volunteer tutors right now. They're mostly actually one of us, or we have 2 other literacy tutors they could work with. It could just be one of the teachers one of our math teachers. Could be anyone on our team. It doesn't have to, they don't have to be trained in NEDP.
Probably depends on what subject
Yeah.
really struggling with.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
Oh,
Exactly.
it's independently paired.
It's not a one kind of set plan for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
wow. Okay.
I like that individualization.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, that is so interesting. Okay, so how do you guys get students enrolled in NEDP? Do you have any recruiting practices?
We haven't done much recruitment. It's been a lot of word of mouth. Last year, about this time, we did go on the radio, the local radio here, and talk about NEDP as an option. It was actually June. There's a hub So as soon as you're trained on NEDP, people indicate they're interested in doing the NEDP route, and that goes to Katya at the state. And then she emails everyone to say, hey, I have someone that's passed the assessments and they're ready to start NEDP who wants to take them on. So there is a hub at the state. So the state's doing some of that recruitment for us. But most of the people that we've gotten have just come to us kind of word of mouth.
Correct me if I'm wrong, with the hub, they could be anywhere in the state.
It can be anywhere in the state.
Still serve them.
Yeah.
Because it's all online.
One of my clients is in Truth or Consequences. Yep.
Got it.
And it's honestly a capacity issue. Like, that's why we're not actively recruiting more than we are, because we are still trying to build our capacity to serve students. So we can't, to serve them, the ones we have well, we just can't be taking on a bunch more students. We are looking to get more of our staff trained. We've sort of found that the best model for us to be able to keep going with this is for everybody on our staff to have a part with one or two students at a time. And otherwise, if it's just kind of left on our small number of staff members right now that are involved, it won't be sustainable.
Because there's a lot of individualized follow-up, and it's a lot of back and forth. Once they start actually doing the competencies, it can be 1 to 2 hours a week per person, depending on how quickly they're moving. So, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. We came into this not really knowing much or really anything about NEDP.
Right.
We met with Katya at the state office for something completely different. And she was like, you guys should, if you're going to do episodes, you have to do an episode on NEDP separate. And she was the one that told us to reach out to you guys. She was like, you guys have the most students right down the state. So I know.
Like, and I don't think I can keep doing this at 9:00 at night on Saturdays.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it's worth it right now. We're learning a lot about what we need to build programmatically for it to work. And it's it's been so powerful for the students who it is serving right now that we need to keep it around. Yeah. So we just have to figure some things out.
And to add to that too, just the area that we're in is rural and pretty spread out. And sometimes transportation is an issue. And like Kylee said, people don't have time to come in the morning for 3 hours for classes. And so if they're a good fit for this program, it's really working well, because they can do it from home as long as they have Wi-Fi and a laptop. And I think it's exciting to watch them grow in the program, because a lot of times with our in-office checks, those are the assessments. They're showing us what they're doing. And it's really rewarding to see them just like boop, 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 boop around on the platform.
Oh, interesting.
And figure out how to make it work. And it's, yeah.
Before we get to your question, Jamie, actually. Oh, I forgot to introduce you, but Jamie's here too. Sorry.
It's all right.
But one thing you guys mentioned being trained at NEDP, and that wasn't part of our questions. And if you guys could just give us just what does that look like?
That is a great question, because somehow I am now the New Mexico State Trainer in Training for NEDP, which what it looks like, it's about 20 hours of training. So they have trainings every few months. If you're ready to get trained, it's Janita McNamara with NEDP is our kind of main contact. CASAS, it's a branch of CASAS, NEDP. Is that how you would say that? A branch or a part of CASAS. And I just helped with one of the trainings that was a national training. They did a 2-day training in Santa Fe in April. A lot of folks from Las Cruces were there, but it's well structured. It's fully supported. They put all the materials on a Google Classroom. You meet with them for about an hour. No, it's more like 2 hours for about 5 weeks straight on a Wednesday. And then they encourage you as soon as possible to get a client.
Wow. That is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't know anything about this. Okay.
Is there a new training you said?
They are actually. They've got enough of a need. NEDP's been on the East Coast for about 20 years, is my understanding.
Really?
So it's a long-standing program. It's just kind of trickling further west. There are some California programs. New Mexico is one of the newer ones, but they did have to add a new training for May. So I'll be sending that out. But if people are interested in doing the training, there's one coming up.
right?
Wow. Okay. So 20 hours, that's basically your professional development hours for a year.
Yeah.
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 Okay. That works out.
It does.
That's great.
So, I mean, you've already mentioned capacity being one of your challenges.
Mhm.
So what are some other challenges as program directors? What are some other challenges that you face with NEDP?
Giving people all of the information they need to make sure they understand if it's a good choice for them or not. I think we found pretty early on, people were always enthusiastic when they heard about it and would always say yes. So we kind of jump into the assessments right away. And I think we've since realized that they need more information and they need time to make the decision. So we've been doing a lot more sort of managed enrollment, I would call it. So we have information sessions like every couple months and let people, they'll either Zoom in or come in person. We give them all the information and say, why don't you think about this? And then get back to us within a week if you want to proceed. We've also been asking them, there's an assessment or competency they don't use anymore, but you can print off. And we've been asking students to look at that and complete it before the information session so they know what the work looks like. They have a sense of what they're going to be doing. Anything else you would add to that?
No, I think it's a different form of, so some of the strengths in our program that keep, retention and persistence up, are aimed at retention and persistence, are the wraparound supports and the frequent check-ins and close advising, coaching relationships. And so some of that just needs to look a little bit different for these students. Mm-hmm. The advising, coaching relationship in some regards is just built in, it's inherent, whereas in close contact with them, which is different than them just, studying on essential ed at home or something. It's just more robust in that way. They have to be connected to move forward. But assuring that we get all of the wraparound supports that we offer here to all of our students and checking in with them about those kinds of things, mental health, food, internet, technology, like anything they need to be successful, we have to make a point of providing the space for them to let us know if there's anything else they're needing to be successful.
Great. So on the flip side of that, what are some benefits to NEDP?
I think I kind of mentioned earlier, we're able to reach a little bit of, we know that there's a need for people to finish their high school equivalency in Taos County. I don't have the statistics right off the top of my head, but it's 20% or so, maybe a little higher of those that are. Am I making that up?
We'll just skip that.
We'll skip that. We get numerous calls. Denise, at our front desk, gets numerous calls about people who need to finish this. And when we mention, our classes are 9 to 12 in the mornings, Monday through Thursday, if they're often older, and by older, I just mean late 20s, early 30s, or 30s and early 40s, that just doesn't work for them. So having another option for them. Benefits are also, we're able, I guess that's the biggest one. We're just able to reach people that we know are there, but haven't been able to meet their needs by our daytime classes.
Yeah. I think the content of the competencies speaks to the adult, learner. And then we haven't mentioned yet our English language learners and how appropriate this pathway is for some of them. Maybe you could speak to that better than me.
That's a good point. Thanks. We do have 2 English language learners who have started the process, and I've asked them if they wanted to take the GED in Spanish, and they have been actively in our English language classes for a couple of years and wanted to try this as an alternative. So it's been a little bit of a longer process. One took a little while to pass the essay test, but we were able to incorporate that into the instruction of the classes, and she was able to try and pass. And I think it's creating confidence with her language skills, but also with her high school level skills as she's working on moving into the generalized assessment phase. And there is nothing, what's nice about NEDP is once they're in that generalized assessment phase, there's nothing that says they can't work together on the work. They have to do the in-office checks by themselves and show that they know the material and the competencies, but they can work together. And that's kind of what we were anticipating. These two students know each other well, and they could work together on preparing for the in-office checks. So it is working well for them. They're gaining confidence in their language skills, but also their academic skills too.
And the structure of the program is so appropriate for those higher level English language learners because they can move at their own pace and they're not having to pass a timed standardized test at the end. So they're gaining the language practice and can move as slowly or as quick as they need to through those competencies. And then once they've met it with 100% mastery, they're done with it. So.
And I think some of that development comes from the back and forth too, right? So they'll finish something and then submit it to their assessor. And that's right now either me, Kylee, or Will, our other staff member who's trained. And we can review it with them. We're not supposed to instruct during the generalized assessment phase. There's no instruction. You just ask them to review the resources that are provided, but we can also refer them to a tutor who can work more directly with them. I think we also haven't said too that, like Kylee said, they can spend as long as they want. Typically, we've heard it can take 9 to 12 months. People finish faster or take a longer amount of time depending on how much time they're spending per week. I think with the people we're working with right now, it's closer to 12. It's been closer to 12 months. But people can really pick if they want to go faster, they can. They want to slow it down, they can slow it down. And they can also pause. Whatever work they've completed doesn't go away.
So it never expires, just to be sure.
Yeah.
So also, because it sounds like this is the case, I just want to be clear for our audience, NEDP is only offered in English?
It's only offered in English.
Okay. That's what I wanted to check.
Yeah.
So you've gone into this a couple of different ways, but you were talking about how it is self-paced, doesn't expire, and there are different phases. So can you give us just a really clear idea of what the NEDP looks like for the student?
Yeah, we give them, just to be fair too, we give them a checklist so they have, they can see the pathway that they're working through. And I would say in our information sessions, it's a lot. So we try to repeat the information again so that they understand fully. But when a student comes in, we try to show them, here's where you're starting. Here's what you need to do. So it starts with that diagnostic phase, which is the 3, they call them closed assessments, which means they're proctored. So they have to complete those, and those have to get a cut score to start with the generalized assessment phase. So 3 assessments. If you don't quite get the score you need, we create a study plan for you. In addition to that, while you're working on your study plan, you can also be doing those open assessments, which are, we mentioned earlier, it's like a self-assessment about your comfort level with technology, about the content of the competencies. There's like a career exploration component that they'll actually use later in one of the competencies, 21st century work skills. And then there's this portfolio they need to create. But the portfolio is really nice because they can just get credit. I say credit in air quotes, but essentially that's fulfilled by providing a pay stub. If they've been working for 6 months or more at a current job or even a previous job, they can just provide a pay stub, and then that fulfillment is required.
Oh, wow.
So what we try to do is manage expectations a little bit and also help them understand that just because they're still in the diagnostic phase, that doesn't mean they're not working towards finishing and making progress. There are things they can be working on. If a student comes and says, I want to take the test again, it's been a week and I've done a lot of refreshing, then we can give it to them again pretty quickly. I think the recommendation is if they've taken it twice, like let's say they take the math test twice and they don't quite get the cut score, we might say, let's give you a month. Just spend a little bit more on essential ed to make sure you've got what you need to pass. So there's, even during the diagnostic phase, there's a lot they're working on.
Those assessments, those are the only assessments they're really taking, but I think they really do, they're very necessary because a student needs to be at that skill level, that cut score, to be successful, to do the work there, because there's a lot of reading, there's a lot of writing, and there is some math, but it's math for work and life. So it's pretty it's a good process, I think, for them to get prepared for the competency.
And what I'm seeing is as they progress through the competencies, the work gets a little more complicated, a little more complex, a little higher level.
But they also become a little more comfortable and proficient in those skills.
Yeah.
That's great. So what students are best suited for NEDP?
We've been doing this for about a year and a half. And I would say the ones we're seeing be really successful tend to be parents, a little bit older, more mature, especially moms. And the ones that I have worked with have a real clear goal in mind about why they're doing this. And that's a motivating factor for them. So they know they need to get this done, whether it's for work or something else, because they have something they want to do next. And they know that the GED or the HiSET isn't going to fit for them. So it's like they have the life skills that they need. They maybe just haven't been in school for a while and don't feel super confident with, classroom skills. Right. And what I mean by that is like math, right? Where they're confident in what they can accomplish, but class doesn't feel like the right way to get where they want to get to. Is there anything you would... I don't know if I'm...
No, I think you were spot on with the motivation. There's some motivation for the, that the students can articulate that really it's obvious that it's propelling them forward. And because it's not easy to study on your own. It takes some motivation and some initiative, and
it's very self-directed. You have to be a self-directed learner,
right? Communicative.
Okay. Would you say it also would require just time management skills?
Yes.
You said self-motivation. Is there any academic level that they might need to be at for it to be successful in this?
Yeah, that's what those initial assessments kind of show. So they have to be able to write an essay pretty comfortably. Math-wise, I don't know what the level, it would be NRS level 4 on the math.
Okay.
And then reading is the same, a high 4, NRS level 4.
Okay, so they do have to be relatively high level comparatively to what we usually serve.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And just as an example of motivation, one of my clients right now wants to go to nursing school, so she needs to get this done. So that's her motivation. Another one is her daughter's graduating next month, so she's like, I got to graduate with her or before her.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, and intrinsic motivation.
And they can learn these skills. Yes, they need to come in, or they need to get to a point where they're prepared enough to be successful with the competencies, but they're also learning so much during that time. So the financial literacy one, for example, I, as the assessor, learned so much about credit cards and APR and annual, just all of the math around interest that one can earn through investment or savings and comparing products that way. And so it just feels very relevant. It's something you'd want to know because it gives you power as a consumer. And so it feels relevant. I learned a lot. So our students are learning a lot with some of these competencies.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no functions or algebra on this, right?
No, there's not.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
not abstract.
Adulting.
Contextualized.
Yeah. I was actually really impressed when you mentioned the financial literacy because that has been, I think, especially since COVID, when we're trying to think about how do we best learn, what do we need, and not just for adult ed students, even for high school students, what is most beneficial? And there's nothing more applied that, in math, especially than financial literacy. That's what we deal with all the time. So that's really impressive.
Oh, sorry, I get so excited about this, but they also have to create some budgets and figure out how to use Excel to do that. And so there's some, great contextualization and integration of skill sets too.
Yeah. So digital skills and financial. That's excellent.
Yeah. And all of the resources in NEDP, it's never going to say create a pie graph it has instructions for how to do that. And so they watch a video. It gives them ideas about how to do that. And then they can go into an Excel spreadsheet or a Google.
Oh, man, that's work skills
sheet.
right there.
Yeah.
Those are those soft skills included in that.
Wow. Okay.
So now that you've been doing this for about a year and a half, you kind of have a really, more refined idea of how to go about offering the NEDP program. So, what structure is needed to serve NEDP students?
More than 2 or 3 trained staff members because it is fairly involved, and we're hoping to get 2 or 3 more trained on our team because it is involved and it's more, Kylee said, we're at capacity right now. And so we want to be able to serve students well. And if it's only 2 of us or 3 of us doing that, there's a lot of follow-up and communicating, especially in the initial stages, to make sure people are okay. And if they want to continue forward, and if it's not working out, maybe checking in with them about that. And some of that is falling kind of off for us right now because we don't have enough people. It's like that intensive advising piece, like Kylee was talking about. We need to figure out how to make that work for NEDP too. And we don't have the capacity right now to do that, but we hope to in the next few months.
Okay. So you basically, I'm hearing from you guys, this isn't like a plug and play platform. You can't just stick a student on a computer and just leave them alone for 6 months.
No, in fact, the recommendation from NEDP is that you meet with them every 1 to 2 weeks, regardless of how much progress they're making.
Yeah. So you need multiple trained staff, depending, the size. Everyone gets assigned 1 to 2 students. You also need to have some basic academics. You need to be able to tutor them if need be. Wow. Okay. And then
on top of the advising piece, the
advice,
remediation, I guess, would be a good word for it.
As well as you mentioned the training itself. So you have to understand the NEDP process too. So that is a lot.
That is a whole lot.
And I remember a year ago now, a program had one, or it had to have been more than one, but somebody who was really focused on NEDP. I don't remember who that was, but it was their whole job, or a lot of their job.
Okay.
And I'm just curious if that would be a good model to just have one. It'd have to be 2 people at least focused on NEDP, but I don't know from a manager perspective if that is feasible, if that would be the smartest, most efficient, fiscally responsible approach to it. I don't know. It's just a question.
So you're saying maybe ideally it would be, but maybe not realistically.
I don't know.
Well, I guess I'm thinking because you said budget wise, so I'm thinking how do you convince a university system hire one person to do NEDP?
Right.
When there's, at this point, 15 students,
Yes, right. Well, and I think we haven't mentioned this yet too. So you have to at least have 2 people because the same person can be the advisor assessor, but your assessor can't be your tutor. You have to have at least 2 people, and 2 people is not enough.
And then there's a portfolio reviewer role, which
3rd person.
Initially, right now, as new trainees, our portfolio reviewer is external. They're from CASAS.
That's part of the training.
Okay.
But once we're fully trained and deemed competent, then we have to become our own portfolio reviewers, which has to be somebody different for the student.
Okay.
So I can be the portfolio reviewer for Erin's students and vice versa. So it seems like 3 people at minimum almost need to be trained in the program.
Yeah, that is definitely a lot.
Wow. So this wasn't part of the questions, but I'm just curious if there was a program that was interested in taking this on, is there, outside, you guys gave really great information, but is there any other advice that you would give them, starting this process?
Maybe start slowly. Maybe start with 1 or 2 students and take that through the process so you get a real sense of what's involved. I think we didn't anticipate initially how much the back and forth would be with the competencies. That getting to 100% is an important part of the process, but it also means you're meeting with your client a lot and discussing, reviewing and sending back and then they're sending it back and you're reviewing, and sometimes you're sending it back and then so I would say start slow. Maybe start with, they encourage you to get a client as soon as you can with the training, but I would say maybe take on 1 or 2 and see how it goes. And then when you get really confident, then take on more.
Mm-hmm. Very good advice. And, I do have one more question about the hub, because of course you had mentioned that there's a state hub. So if there was either a student who was just interested in NEDP, or there was a program that thought their student would benefit from NEDP and they are not a provider, how do they access that hub?
My understanding is you connect them with Katya, and Katya figures out the assessment piece. And then from there, Katya will ask everyone that is an NEDP provider via email who has the space to take that person on. And then people volunteer.
Yeah. Just for clarification, Katya Backus.
Yeah.
From the New Mexico HED office.
And we will put that information in the resources for this episode.
Yeah. So, wow, guys, thank you so much for your time. This was really
very informative.
Very informative. And it just is such an interesting alternative. Yeah, to adult education. It's really, I feel like in my time in adult ed, I've just been seeing so much growth, especially in New Mexico, so much growth. It's really impressive.
Oh, yeah. And I was excited about NEDP from the get-go when we first started talking about this several years ago at the state conference. So it's great to see it in action.
I think we just need, we're in the business of being responsive to our students' needs. And this is one way to be meeting the needs of the students who it's serving right now.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.